All right, good morning. Thank you again for joining us for today's session, which focuses on business continuity between the data center and the cloud. I'm Matt Edwards, Senior Manager at CDW, and I'm joined today by Ego, Gurdeep, and Santosh, who are members of the CDW Microsoft Solutions team. Throughout the session, everyone will have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat field. We did receive some questions prior to the presentation, and we will be addressing those after the presentation. If there are additional questions, please ask them through the Q&A, which has been set up on this session, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can in the time allotted after the presentation. For any additional questions that we don't get to, we will respond to you through your CDW account manager. And if you could ask, in the Q&A field, when you ask your question, if you could please include your name and organization. That way we'll know how to get in contact you if we get in contact with you if we can't answer during the session. So before handing things over, I wanted to highlight a few reasons why CDW is such a strong partner with Microsoft on the Azure platform. Ego, can you go to the next slide? CDW, we are proud to say that we are the leading IT solutions and services partner in Canada, and we are focused on integrating and managing technology to help customers achieve their desired outcomes. Next slide. And we got there by delivering strong financial performance over the past 35 years, which has allowed us to invest and consistently develop our services practice globally. And in particular here in Canada, in recent developments in 2019, CDW acquired Scalar Decisions, which adds a lot of experience and service capability on Microsoft's platforms. Whether you're looking for product assistance, licensing assistance, or deployment assistance, we have the resources to support you throughout the entire process. Next slide. And we also now have access to 2,000 plus technical resources, an established professional services practice, and no matter where you are in the country, with 9 locations spread out throughout the country, we can deliver all these services locally. And with that, I'll pass things over to Ego.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks everyone for joining us again today. So diving into the topic of today, let's review some considerations that support the need for a business continuity plan. Presenting with me are Gurdeep and Santosh Yadav. Gurdeep is a senior field solutions architect in Azure, and Santosh is our technical architect who will run through the demo. So here are just a few reasons why organizations today need to build in resiliency into their business continuity plan. We see an increasing requirement to enable the workforce all across the world operate remotely. And with this requirement, organizations need to ensure their businesses can operate securely and, especially in the event of a disaster, continue operations. It is so critical when planning a business continuity that an adequate infrastructure resiliency plan is also created with your business continuity plan. So just to touch briefly on what is resiliency, it is not about avoiding failures, but really about responding to failures. For example, it's so important you understand your business availability requirements, such as how much downtime, if any, is acceptable by your business. How much would a downtime cost you as a business should there be an event of an outage? Knowing the answers to these questions, then you should know how much should you invest in your resiliency design. These are just a few questions to guide in selecting the right resiliency options, be it a high availability plan, a DR plan, and/or a backup plan. Our webinar today will focus on the third aspect of resiliency planning within your BCP, which is the backup aspect, using the Azure Backup Services. This is because we're seeing more customers embracing cloud backups to ensure that their backups are always protected and always available. So today we will also present several ways you can achieve your backup requirements on Azure. It is, however, important to note that backup alone is simply a part of a business continuity plan in order to ensure your systems are fully resilient against failures and will respond healthily. It is good planning practice to ensure that all these concepts, high availability, DR, and backup, are factored into your resiliency design. That said, I will now hand over to my colleague Gertie to continue with the webinar.
Thank you, Ego. I will just share my screen so that we can get going. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in. My name is Gurdeep, and I'm a field solution architect working on Azure. So let's get into the topic of our discussion today, Azure Backup. And there is it's not a total surprise that the amount of data that organizations are growing these days and now storing is continuously rising. Analysis tells us that the data rates are growing at over 40% per year, and 90% of world's current data was created in the past few years. This rapid rise means that the cost of storing this data is rising year on year. The good news is that the cost per terabyte is falling year on year as well. So the storage is becoming a little bit less cost effective. But unfortunately, the rate of data growth is not same as the the cost of maintaining or managing the data on our storages. The cost of backup is also rising from purchasing a solution, running it, training people to use it. The cost and complexity of managing the storage is also a factor. That means we have to manage all the backup media, store it, test it in case we need, you need to restore any kind of files or data we have backed up. All this leads to the possibility that the important data may go unprotected either entirely or for longer periods than is ideal. As we consider these challenges, let's see how Azure Backup helps address these challenges. So Azure Backups helps protect server data against loss and corruption by enabling backup to offsite cloud storage in Azure. Azure not only stores data on offsite cloud, but it also ensures that data is secured as it is allows customers to encrypt data. So it is also secure and is available on a different storage away from our primary location. Once on cloud, we need not worry about how we scale in case we need more resources. Azure Backup supports unlimited scale. Furthermore, it allows customers to choose local or geographical redundancy for storing the backup data. So that means we can have multiple copies sitting in different locations, thereby increasing the availability of our data. As it is an extension of Microsoft Backup Utility, it has very familiar interface and it integrates seamlessly with Windows, Linux, VMware, or Hyper-V environment. And it offers a single pane of glass for managing backup across different platforms. So we did not need to have multiple tools for managing multiple technology or multiple platforms. It provides a consistent experience in configuring, monitoring, and recovering backups across local disk or even cloud storage. Azure Backup supports flexible configuration of backup policy, the possibility to restore backup on Azure or on-premise. Most importantly, as Azure Backup is pay-as-you-go model, it allows expenses to be based on consumption or usage. So it's a metered usage consumption-based model. Now let's discuss about, there are a few scenarios that where we can use Azure Backup. Now, first of the scenario is that let's say you are already on Azure and have deployed services such as virtual machines. Azure Backup is fully equipped to protect virtual machines by scheduling a backup based on the requirement. You can have your policy set up on Azure virtual machines or any other Azure resources. And the another case is that let's say we have all the infrastructure on premise and we need to protect those servers, be it physical or virtual, be it Windows or Linux. Azure Backup can protect data in all of these scenarios. The next one is very useful. If you have invested in Windows System Server Data Center Protection Manager, we can integrate it with Azure. So we did not let go our investment that we have done towards procuring the Microsoft technology. We can integrate it to an offsite repository. So that will allow us to push backup data from on-premise to cloud using the same utility platform. Last one that is applicable to most of our customers here is if we have already invested in procuring a third-party backup tool such as Veeam, Commvault, Veritas, etc., we can still reap the benefits of cloud by integrating these tools with Azure. Now, the most important concern while going on for cloud-based solution is security. Let us understand how Azure offers peace of mind that our data is safe and secure on cloud. Now, the first stage is the transfer process, is the inscription of your data on-premise using your keys. So data that is being targeted to be backed up on cloud is encrypted on-premise. The data stays in. The next stage is to transfer the data over the wire. So first we encrypted it, then it remains encrypted on the wire, and it goes over to Azure storage. Your data stays encrypted while the Azure storage it's in there in the Azure storage. It never decrypts while it resides in Azure storage. Your data can only be decrypted once it's restored on your on-premise network. Only you have the decryption key to do so. This makes it very important to protect this key. Make sure that the backup of your key is safe and store it a copy of the key offsite somewhere. Your data cannot be decrypted without it. In the event of key loss, Microsoft cannot help you as Microsoft does not have a copy of your key and has no access to it. So the key is never passed to Azure during the Azure backup. If you lose it, not even Microsoft can recover your data. Now, in continuation to what Ego presented from data resiliency platform regarding high availability and disaster recovery and Azure backup, there is some platform in resiliency built in by Microsoft. So those are called Azure availability sets. We can plan resiliency at several stages. So beginning with the first one, the high availability, which is making the infrastructure redundant in terms of operating resources. For example, if we are running an application on a single virtual machine, we are an easy target of virtual machine failure. And if that is to happen, we are definitely looking at disruption or downtime in our services. We can ensure against any such event if we deploy our application on two virtual machines across two different data centers within the same region. Right, and those virtual machine can run in maybe active-active scenario or maybe active-passive scenario. But then we are achieving high availability if you're deploying more than one virtual machine for one function. From infrastructure perspective, Azure supports availability sets, which ensures that no two virtual machines are deployed on the same infrastructure having single point of failure. So basically, availability set ensures again, in case we are installing the two virtual machine on one hardware, this will refrain us from moving away from that kind of solutions. The next one is availability zones that offers high availability protection against loss of complete data center, multiple data center per physically separated zone. So there are different data centers available in the same region, and then we can choose to deploy our virtual machines or data onto different facility altogether. This will ensure that our data is safe in case there is a site failure altogether. Then the next level of availability that offers in the platform is region pairs. Region pairs protect our data and application from the loss of entire region by applying or enabling a copy of our data to a different geographical redundant storage and using Azure Site Recovery as well, that we can achieve the same features. Now let's look at the Azure storage. That is the repository where our backup resides. Azure offers different types of storage redundancy, which further increase our data availability. Local redundant storage is basic one and is by default included in the storage. It ensures that multiple copies of our data is stored on different physical storage appliances within the same facility. LRS ensures 11 nines of data availability. The next level of redundancy is zone redundant storage, which protects against loss of data centers. ZRS ensures that a copy of our data is stored in different zone within the same region. ZRS ensures 12 nines of availability. The last level and the strongest resilient storage solution is geographical redundant storage, which ensures data protection in case of region failure. GRS provides 16 nines of data availability. Azure Backup supports all the policies that we are used to follow, and those are full backup, differential backup, and incremental backups. So there are no changes. So we can follow the same policy that we are used to follow with any other backup solutions. Now, it is important to understand the pricing for Azure Backup, how it works. So Microsoft have divided the cost into two components if we focus on Azure Backup only. First component is the cost per protected instance, which is the license cost for protecting the virtual machine or the server, physical server, be it on-premise or on Azure. Now, the other component is storage. So focusing on the cost per protected instance, Microsoft has categorized into three subcategories. Any virtual machine or physical server having up to 50 gigabytes of storage attached to it is categorized as small instance. Anything between 51 GB to 500 GB is categorized as medium instance. Anything more than 500 GB is large instance. And those are the numbers associated with that. These are all in Canadian dollars and also associated to Canada East. If we change the region, these numbers might vary a bit. The another component is the storage. That is the how much storage we consume for storing our data. And that is all is built on the basis of as much as you consume. The cost per protected instance is fixed cost, that is per month, whereas the storage cost is, if you can consume 100 GB and next week you reduce from 100 to 50, you'll be charged for 50 for that time. Now, there is a tier of storage that is applicable for both LRS and ZRS based on the capacity we need to choose. So let's say up to 50 terabytes of storage capacity will be charged, about a third of a cent per GB per month. So that's the cost that we are looking at. Now let's take an example and translate the concept to a protected instance. Now let's say if you need to back up an instance, which is 4 vCPU, 8 GB and 200 gigs of storage capacity attached to the virtual machine. The 200 GB will align with a medium instance protected instance cost, that is $12.80 per month. If we choose a local redundant storage for storing 200 GBs of data, that will be about $6.76. Or if we choose geographical redundant storage, it will be $13.52. Now, let's say if we are making a restore, because bandwidth charges are also applicable if we are drawing data out of the cloud. Anything that goes into cloud is free of cost. Anything that comes out or from restoration perspective, we get charged. So let's say if we are making a full restore over a month, then the cost of bandwidth is about $21. So in total, if we combine all three components, we are spending about $41.28 per month for protecting one backup instance on Azure. Okay, so from demo perspective today, let's take a look at the first scenario that we are going to demo after this architecture diagrams. The first one is taking a backup of an on-premise file server. It requires an agent, which is MARS, Microsoft Azure Recovery Service Agent, to be deployed at the target server. The data is encrypted before it is put on wire. That's what this agent does. It actually configures the policy and it does the encryption and compression, and then it pushes the data onto the wire to recovery service vault, which is the services which we use to store the backups on cloud. It is the interface that talks to Azure storage in the backend. The other scenario is where we have an on-premise virtual environment with application servers and SQL database server. In this scenario, we need to install Microsoft Azure Backup Server in the local network. We would need it as a virtual machine or a physical server that sits in your local network. And this tool will do the local backup copy, and it will push the backup to cloud at the same time. Using these two methods, we can backup files, folders, database, application for workstation for physical and virtual environments. Also, one recovery service vault allows us to have up to 9,999 recovery points. One recovery point is basically one backup. While we restore, we have flexibility to store on a disk level, a folder level, or just a file. So we have the flexibility to choose how we want to make a restoration. In this scenario, we will take a look at how we can integrate Azure storage with a third-party backup tool. For example, Veeam, Commvault, or Veritas, to take an example for. In this case, Azure is acting as an offsite backup storage target. The files and the data are stored in format that is controlled by third-party tool configuration. So if we are using Veeam, for example, as a third-party tool, the data that will be pushed onto the Azure storage will only be comprehended by Veeam tool itself, because that is the backup format we have used. Connecting the backup tool to Azure storage may require a VPN, or it can communicate directly over a protocol level. Generally, with the latest versions of all the third-party tools, we can connect Azure storage to almost all of the third-party backup tools at a protocol level. So there is an API available. We can connect that Azure storage at an API level itself. This scenario allows us to leverage our IT investments that we have made in procuring these third-party tools. So we are not letting it go. We are still making use of a complete investment that we have done towards procuring a backup solution. We still get the flexibility to choose Azure storage, which is among choosing a hot tier, cool tier, or archive tier, depending upon our requirements. And we can still also choose a redundancy level that we have discussed earlier in the presentation. Let's take a look what we have discussed today. Thinking back to the data protection challenges, we know that data rates are growing at an exponential rate. We need a solution to protect this data that is simple and reliable, which is Azure Backup. Azure Backups provide a simple and reliable backup solution that utilizes an enterprise class storage system in Azure. This delivers convenient, reliable, secure offset protection. All this is delivered using Microsoft Backup tools. You can get started with Azure Backup today. Let's look at some of the demonstration of Azure Backup to get you going in the next section. Over to you, Santosh.
Thank you, Gurdeep. Let me quickly share my screen. I hope you can see my screen now. So let's get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Santosh. I'm technical architect for Microsoft Azure here at CDW. The first scenario that we'll be covering would be files and folder level backup. The second one would be the server level backup, and third one we will use an example of Veeam as a third-party backup software, and we will connect it to Azure storage. So let's get started with the first scenario, that's file and folder level backup. The first thing that you need for it to work is to create a backup vault in Microsoft Azure and then install the software, that's Microsoft Azure Recovery Services Agent, on the file server or the client machine from where you want to back up the files and folders. So let's get started and create a backup vault. So when we click on create resource, it will just take us to the marketplace in the Azure portal. We go to backup and site recovery, and we hit on create. This will just ask us for few information like which service you want to use. In case you have multiple subscriptions, it will give you an option to select one of those subscriptions where you want to create the backup vault. The second thing that you have to do is create a resource group, which is nothing but a logical unit wherein you'll be storing everything related to your backup scenario in this case, or if you have a different project, you can use resource groups to create or manage the resources more efficiently. So you can either create one or you can use the existing one. So in this case, I already have a resource group, so I'll just go ahead and select that. Now you need to give a meaningful name to your backup vault. So it can be anything. Let's say we can just call it backup vault or you can give it some other meaningful name that suits your needs. The last but not the least option is to select the region. So this is the region where all the metadata will be saved. So you need to make sure this is closest to your location, that way, or it is in the region where you can store all the metadata related to your backup. So for me, in this case, is Canada Central. So I'll just select that. And once we are done with that, we just hit on review and create. It will just create the backup vault. I'm not going to do that because I already have a backup vault created. Let me switch back to that. So this is the screen that you will see once the backup vault is created. Now let's get started with backup. Let's click on backup, and then here we're trying to protect files and folders from on-premises. So we'll select that and what you want to back up. So here we have many different options. So we will focus only on the first option for this scenario, files and folder, and we will click on prepare infrastructure. Now here you'll see that it will ask you to download the agent for Windows Server or the Windows client. You have to download that and install it. Once you've done that, it will ask you or prompt you for a vault credential to make the connection between the vault that you just created and the agent that you install, so that it can start taking the backup and pushing it to Azure. So you just need to select this, already downloaded, once you have installed the software, and download the vault credential. That is it. Now let me show you the agent that I've installed already. So this is how the agent looks like once it's installed. So the first thing that you have to do is register server. I've already done that, but I will quickly go through that so that you can see how it looks like. So the first option it gives you is to set any proxy server or use any proxy server that is already in place. In case you have none, you can just head on next, which is in my case, I'll do that. This is where it will ask for the vault credential that we just downloaded from the Azure portal. So we can go ahead, browse that. Let me find that for you. Once you do that, you can see here the backup vault that we created, the region we selected, the subscription ID, and the vault credential expiry date. Everything is right here. You can select that. You can verify that. And once it's set up, you just need to hit on next. Now, this is the place where you have to generate a passphrase, and this is the most important step here, because this passphrase should be protected at all times. If you lose this passphrase, it cannot be regenerated, and this is used, let's say, in case you have a file server or the client from where you were backing up and it's destroyed or it's not working anymore, or it's decommissioned. So now you want to restore these backups on another server altogether. That's when you will need both the vault credential, which can be downloaded again from the Azure portal, and this passphrase to make sure the connection is made and you are authorized to recover the data. So save this passphrase and make sure that it is like safe in one of the locations where you can access it and it's not lost. So either you can generate or you can create your own by typing in something, which is minimum of 16 characters. Once that is done, it will ask you to provide a save location. You can provide that either on the computer or a drive, or you can use a key vault, anything that works for you. So once this is done, you will be able to, let me select a location. And once you're done with that, you can hit on register and it will register this particular agent with Microsoft Azure Backup Vault that you created. I will not do that because I've already done that. So I'll just go ahead and cancel this. The next step is to schedule the backup. So let me go ahead and hit on schedule backup, and it will just show me the screen where I can go ahead and select my backup items. Because I already have a backup schedule created, I'll just go ahead and modify that. So this is the place where you will be able to add items. You can select files, folders, whatever is available on your file server or the client machine. And once you're done with that, just hit on OK. So I already have one of the files selected. Once you're done with all the selections, hit on next, and it will give you the option to schedule the backup daily or weekly. So you have the option to select 3 times if you're going for the option daily, or else you can go weekly options. You can have 3 times, different times, and you can select the days that you want to back up. Once you're done with the selections, just hit on next. Now, this is the place where you have to provide the retention policy for your backup copy. How long you would like Azure to retain this copy of backup. So it can be daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. You need to select the options based on your organization's standard. And once you have provided all the retention policy, you can hit on next, and it will just show you a standard screen of the summary, a confirmation page basically, where you can see what you're trying to protect and backup time, backup days, the frequency, retention days, and everything. Once you're done with that, hit on finish. Now I've already done this, so I'll just go ahead and cancel it. So that is it. Once you're done with the scheduling backup, it will just start taking a copy of backup as per the schedule that you just provided. In case you want to back up at any point in time and just not go by the schedule, you can just hit on backup now. It will just show the screen, and based on your retention policy, it will just point it to a date you want to retain the backup, and hit on next. It will show the confirmation page, what you're trying to back up based on your backup schedule where you selected the items, and hit on backup. It will just start taking the backup immediately after that. So we'll just go ahead and cancel that because I don't want to take a backup right now. Now let me show you how we can recover data. So when we hit on recover data, it just shows us whether you want to recover this on the same server or another server. This is the option that I was talking about. If you select another server, in case in future your existing file server is decommissioned or not working anymore, and you want to recover the files on another server, so you will have to provide the vault credential, and in the next screen, it will ask you to provide the passphrase that you saved. So a combination of both is needed here to make the connection back to Azure so that you can recover data to another server. We will not go through that step right now. We will just select this server and we'll hit on next, because we are just trying to recover individual files and folder. We haven't actually protected different volumes, so we'll just select the first option, hit on next. It will ask us which volume you're trying to recover data from. We just select that. It will fetch all the recovery points. It will display it on the screen, and we will be able to select the date, how far back we want to go, or is it the recent one that you want to select. So just select based on that, select a time, and hit on mount. So once you mount the drive, let me show you. So you will see a drive mounted right here, from where you will be able to browse the files that you backed up and then copy those files to wherever you want. And once you're done with that, you should unmount the drive, and I will show that to you quickly. Once this is completed, this might take a couple of minutes, and again, it also depends on the network bandwidth that is there, in case you have enabled any throttling on that, and also the size of the data matters. If it's a really large amount of data that you have stored, then it might take more than a couple of minutes. So I just have a single file, so it shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes. But again, I'll just let it continue. And in the meanwhile, I'll just jump on to the next scenario that's backing up at the server level. So I'll come back to this in a few minutes to show you how it looks like. Oh, all right. So it's completed. Let me just go ahead and quickly show before we move on then. So now you can see a drive is mounted right here. I will be able to go inside, browse through it, and look at the file that I have saved, and I can just copy that file. In case you want to open it, you can open it here as well, just to see if you're taking the right copy of file or not. And you just copy this and paste it to any location, just like a copy paste would work here. And that's it about how you can recover your data. So once you're done with this, make sure that you unmount the drive. In case you forget to do that, it will automatically unmount itself in 24 hours. But it's always best practice to unmount it because if you forget and there is any other schedule in place on the same day, then that particular backup will fail because the drive is already mounted, and Mars agent will not be able to push another backup copy on the same drive which is already mounted. So we need to unmount it, and once we do that, the status here will change to job completed. You can see that, and that's it about recovery. So now let's move on to the second scenario. That's your server level backup. Now in this case, again, we can create a new vault or utilize the same vault that we used before. So I will just go ahead and show you how it looks like. So once you have your vault created, you need to click on backup, and this time we will select on premises, and we will select all other options that is there: virtual machines, VMware virtual machines, SQL Server, and all the options that is there, we'll just select. And you will see now that we will get another option. Instead of the agent, we will get a backup server to download and install. In case you're using System Center already, then you can just select that, and you can directly download the vault credentials and register your System Center with Azure. If not, then you can go ahead and download an Microsoft Azure Backup Server and install it. Once you've installed it, you can download the vault credential to make the connection, and it's the same, pretty much the same process that we used in the previous example. So it will just go through certain steps. It will install the map server for you, and you can make the connection using the vault credential. And it will also give you an option, just like the previous example, to save the passphrase or the key, and you have to protect it at all times because that's generated only once. So let me go to the machine where I have actually installed this backup server. Let me log into it. So this is where I have installed the backup server. This is how the backup server looks like. So once you have installed and you have saved the passphrase and the connection is made through the vault credentials to Azure, you will see this screen. You can go to the management tab of this map server, and you can start adding all the credentials and servers right here. So the first thing I am using, let me show that to you. I am using VMware environment right here, where I have multiple virtual machines. So I'm trying to connect this to map server and take backups from this environment, right? So let me show that to you. So the first step here is to make sure that you're connected to VMware. So you can click on Manage VMware, and it will ask you to provide a credential. I've already added that, but I'll show you how the screen looks like. So you just have to provide your name, description, username, and password. That's it. It will connect to your VMware environment. Once that is done, you need to add that to map server so that it can start looking into all the machines and whatever you are trying to back up from the environment. So I have the VMware server, so I will just go ahead, hit on next, provide an IP address of the server or the server name. SSL port remains same. It's 443 for this. If in case it shows up something else, just make sure to type 443 and use the credential that we just provided in Manage VMware. So you can either add here or you can use the one that you already added. So once you're done with that, just click on Add and click on Next. That's it. It will show which computer it's trying to add, and you can hit on Add. I will not do that because I've already added it. So let me go back to this. So that is all you need to do to make the connection between your environment and this map server that we just installed. The next step here is to add a disk storage. Now, unlike the previous example where we can directly push the backup to Azure, in this scenario, we will have to have a local disk in place where we will push the backup, and from there it will be pushed to Azure. This is mandatory and we cannot skip this right now, but we can always have a retention policy of, let's say, 1 day, which is minimum. That will make sure that your disk is utilized only for 1 day and the data is pushed to Azure, and then it's again erased, and next day it will write again on the same disk. So you can do that, or else if you have a big disk in place or larger disk in place, so you can probably retain the data for longer time, because in case you want to recover data from the disk, it's much easier and it will not consume any network cost. So it's always a better option. So whatever works for you, you can do that. But this is very important step. So you'll have to add a disk. And here I've already added a disk. In case you want to add another disk, you can go to add screen, and once the disk is available locally on your machine, you will be able to see that here, and you can just hit on add. So it will just tell you that it will reformat reformat the drive so that it can use that for backup purpose. So I will not do that. I will go ahead and cancel this. Now, this is the third option, that's the online option. Now, since we have already registered, at the time of installation, it will show the subscription that we have used and the Azure Backup Agent version that is installed. So everything that will be shown here. In case you want to change this in future, you can just hit on register, and you will be able to re-register with a new backup vault. So that's pretty much about how we make the connection and how we set it up for backup. Now let's move on to protection, where we will actually create the protection group and start backing up data. Now this protection group can be created in many different ways, based on what you want to protect, and you will set up all the retention policies, backup schedule on this particular protection group. So in case you want to back up only SQL database, you can create a protection group for that and push all the SQL database and have a retention policy and backup schedule for that. In case you have a different backup schedule or retention policy for a different set of data that you're trying to protect, then you can create another protection group for that. So it's at the protection group level. So let me go ahead and click on new, and let's see how the screen looks like when we are trying to create the protection group. Now this is just a welcome screen. We will hit on next, and this is where it will ask whether you're trying to create a protection group for server or client. Let's select server, hit on next, and you will see all your machines that is there in your environment that you're trying to protect right here. You can go inside and check what you want to backup or protect here. Let's say I just select this and hit on next. Now, the next screen will ask us to provide a protection group name. Now, this should be a meaningful name that makes more sense to you. I'm just trying to protect a drive, so I'll just type, for the sake of it, a drive protection group. I'll just type PG for that. Now, here you can see I want a short-term protection using disk, which is mandatory. What happens if we deselect that? You will see the option for online protection is grayed out. That's why I mentioned before that it is mandatory to have a disk in place. So we'll just go ahead, select a disk, select this option, and hit on next. Now select short-term goals. Now this is the retention policy that you'll set for your disk. It's not for Azure, only for your disk. Now, how long you want to retain the copy on your disk. So the minimum is 1 day, and you can select as many number of days you would like to keep the data on the disk. You can also specify a recovery point for files here, right here. You can modify, you can add like more times in a day right here, or if you want to protect it only on let's say Saturdays and Sundays, that's the weekend, or you want to protect it on all days, take a copy and put it on disk every single day, then you can select, you can make the changes as per your needs. And once you're done with that, hit on next. Here it will show the disk option where you can save this copy of backup. If in case you have multiple disks, you can select them. I just have one disk, so I'll just select that and hit on next. Now in this, it will ask you how would you like to take this backup, right? So it's either automatic over the network, or you can also specify manual option. We will not go through that because there are a lot of lot of information that you have to provide to set that up. So we'll just go ahead and stick with automatic over the network, and we'll hit on next. Now this is another important thing to configure. Running a consistency check on the replica when it becomes inconsistent is very important. In case the replica is inconsistent, your backup job will fail. So you need to make sure the replica is consistent at the time of backup schedule. If in case you're not too sure whether you will run into any consistency check issues, you can always schedule a consistency check daily. Let's say you have a backup schedule at 12 p.m. Just make sure you run a daily consistency check, maybe at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. Just to make sure the data is consistent and the backup job will go through smoothly. So once you're done with that, hit on next, and this is the place where it will ask you to select again. Now this is for Azure, whatever you want to protect online and push all the backups to Azure. So it will give you an option to select again whatever you are trying to protect from the list of items that you selected for disk initially. So you can select based on that and hit on next. And again, it's the same thing. You have to specify the backup schedule, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. Once you're done with selecting all these options, you just need to hit on next. It will take you to the next page where it will ask you to specify the retention policy for Azure Backup. Now, all these retention policy is applicable to Azure. So how long you would like to retain this copy of backup in Azure. So whether you want to just weekly, monthly, or yearly, whatever suits your organization needs, you can just select here. And once you're done with that, hit on next. It will ask you again whether you want to do this automatically over the network or offline backup. Again, you can see if we select offline backup, we have to provide a bunch of information. So we will just skip that. We will go with automatic selection here, and we will hit on next. Now this is the standard page again. It will show you what you're trying to do in this protection group. It's just basically a summary. Once you're done with that, you just hit on create group, and it will create your protection group and start taking backup as per whatever you have defined in the protection group. So I would not do that because I have protection groups in place. So that's pretty much about how you schedule backup. Now let's see another option, that's recovery. Now, whenever you're trying to recover data, you want to make sure like you've selected the date where you want to fall back to. Now it can be like, let me just go ahead and select one of the database that I'm protecting right now, and it will give you an option to select dates, and then you will be able to select whether it's a disk backup. Right now I don't have the online recovery points available, but if you have the online recovery points created, and you will be able to select that. In case you don't have a copy retained on the disk, you will be able to select the online copy from Azure if it's retained for a longer time and you're trying to fall back to that time. Once you're done with that, just hit on recover. It will show you again the option what you're trying to recover. Hit on next. It will ask you, since it is the SQL database, where you want to recover this. I will just select the original instance, hit on next, and it will just ask for different options, whether you want to leave database operational or non-operational. Select that, hit on next. It will ask for the network bandwidth. If you want to specify anything, you can modify it here, and the summary. And then you just hit on recover. It will just recover the data for you. That's pretty much about map server here. Again, you want to monitor anything, there is a monitoring tab. You can monitor based on the jobs that is there, all jobs in progress. Now everything, you can create new filters, custom filters, and monitor everything what's happening in the map server. So that's pretty much about map server. Now let's jump on to the last scenario, that's using any backup software that you've already invested in. So in this case, I already have a Veeam backup software installed. So for this, you will need to create, you cannot use the backup vault, but you can create an Azure storage that you can use as an offsite storage location for your backups. So I have created a storage account here, and here you can see I've just named it Veeam Backup. And when we go inside this containers, we will see all the copy of backups that we have taken. It will be pushed here, and you will be able to see it right here. So you can just go inside, drill down, and check. So I will not go through that. I will just show you the Veeam software that I have. So if you're using Veeam, you must be familiar with this screen. Almost all the backup software have similar kind of screens. So we will not go through how to set up Veeam and everything in this particular demo. We'll just focus on Azure piece of it, how to make connection to Azure for offsite backup. So if we go here, manage cloud credentials, it will just ask us to add the credentials right here. So if I click on add, it will give me an options, different bunch of options. We'll just stick with Microsoft Azure storage account. That's what we have created in Azure. And it will ask you for the storage account name and the shared key that you can grab from the portal itself and provide it here. Once you do that, your Veeam is set to send all the copies to an offsite location. That's Azure in this case. Now let me show you what you have to do next. Once you have provided the credentials and your storage accounts is set, you need to create a scale out repository so that it can start pushing the data to Azure. So I have already created this, so I'll just go ahead and edit the same scale out repository to show you how it looks like. So you can give it a name right here, any meaningful name that works for you. Hit on next. It will ask you which repository you want to add. Just do that and hit on next after that, and it will give you an option whether you want to select data locality or based on performance. So whatever works for you, you will select that. Hit on next, and again, it will give you the capacity tier and all other options that you can select right here. Once you've done everything, just click on apply. It will create the scale out repository. Connection is made to Azure storage, and based on your backup schedule, it will start pushing it to Azure. That's pretty much how you can configure offsite backup if you already have invested in any other backup software other than Microsoft Azure Backup Server. So that's pretty much from my end. If in case you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat window. We'll try to answer that. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Over to you, Ago. You can continue.
Thank you so much for that, Santosh. That was an insightful demo. And just to recap on the scenarios we reviewed today, so we have reviewed the file folder level backup, system level backup in Azure. And as Santosh did mention, if you do have an existing backup solution and you want to continue to leverage that investment, you can certainly utilize Azure as your offsite repository. So we do hope you found this session today useful. We invite you to begin your journey on Azure with CDW. CDW is a cloud solutions provider for Microsoft today, so we can certainly support you on your journey to the cloud. Guide with your roadmap planning as well, because we have a strong bench of solution architects available to support your projects. So if you have any questions, I guess we can go to the questions now. Michelle, can you pull out any questions?
Hi, yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing that presentation with us. I know that everyone on the call probably found it very informative. So we do have a couple of questions. I know that we're nearing our cutoff of 12, so maybe we'll just go through one or two. If you do have to drop off the call, feel free to do so. And if you do have any questions, do leave them in the Q&A chat and with your company name and account manager, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. But for sure, let's get into it right now. The first question that we received was, what drives can I back up files and folders?
Okay, so basically we can back up all the files that are there on a hosted target instance, but there are some things that we cannot back up. For example, removable media, some read-only volumes, maybe some offline volumes, network shares, for example. There are some prerequisites that we need to enable these drives or medias for us to be able to back them up. And so, as for example, BitLocker protected volumes, so we need to unlock those volumes before we start a backup on those. And for fileless system identification, currently NTFS is the only supported format. Going forward, there might be some developments that Microsoft might start supporting any other file system identification as well.
Amazing. Okay, how do I register a server to another region?
So basically, when you create a recovery service vault, it is tied to one region, and you install the agent, and that agent communicates with that vault. So whenever you need to make a change in region, you need to reinstall the agent and connect it to the new vault created in the new region.
Cool. Okay, so we just have 2 more questions left. I'm going to race through them. Can I register the server to multiple vaults?
As of now, no. One server can only be registered to one vault, but we can, as we have discussed in the other question, that we can always change, server from one vault to another vault by reconnecting it.
And the last question, can I back up VMware vCenter servers to Azure?
Yep, so we can back up VMware vCenter server and ESXi host in Azure using Azure Backup servers that we have seen the demonstration as well.
Awesome. Okay, that concludes all of the questions that we have right now. A big thank you to all of our presenters today, and an even bigger thank you for everyone joining the call. I think we're done for the day, so I will give you back your afternoon. I hope everyone has a great day.